for that answer.
What's on the papers?
The papers today, I'll start with the Daily Nation. At the very top there, you can see that yesterday was actually Kiptum's anniversary. And it talks about car crash probe report has never been released, says the father of the fallen athlete. Very unfortunate. That story, they say, is on page 35. So please, if you can take a look at it to honor somebody who is considered one of the greatest athletes of our time, unfortunately passed away. And yes, there was a probe report that has since never been released. And the father has questions. Big headline here. Shah tycoons link in teachers' insurance woes. Scandal with a question mark. Jayesh Umesh Saini is the beneficial owner of Medical Administrators Limited and Bliss Healthcare Limited, which are at the center of the 55 billion shilling teachers' medical insurance controversy, which imploded recently after some hospitals withdrew services to beneficiaries and their families, citing, yes, not surprisingly, pay arrears.
What?
Full story on page 4. He had also he sued an activist, one of the activists in the country, right? I think, Shah, we fully understand how completely entangled it is, but this just gives another layer, which is a certain section of people who now are unable to access medical care, right? So that is that story. We'll talk a little bit about it later. And finally, at the bottom of the page there, we're still talking about the succession. Aga Khan V, His Highness, takes over as Ismaili spiritual leader. His Highness Prince Rahim Aga Khan V has formally assumed his role as the new spiritual leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslim community. The accession ceremony took place yesterday in Lisbon. And if you look at page 2 and 3, again, we still have images that honor his father, who passed away last week. And now we will begin to shift focus on him, I believe, as he officially succeeds his father. What are his priorities? What does he want to leave as a priority that his father was following up? What are his own intentions to continue as a spiritual leader, as a philanthropist, as a leader, as somebody who also is involved in collaborating with heads of state across the world? So that's a look at the national news on our Daily Nation today.
Cool beans. What's on the Business Daily?
On the Business Daily, there's quite a bit, but there's a deported Ruto ally who wins affordable housing deal. So a company linked to a controversial Turkish businessman close to President William Ruto has won a multi-billion shilling deal to build affordable houses, making him one of the top beneficiaries of the state housing scheme. MHOA Africa Limited, owned by Harun Aydin, is part of a joint venture expected to build at least 100,000 homes under the scheme. And of course, it's partially funded by the housing levy. And this Mr. Aydin was deported from Kenya in 2021. And official company documents show that the state-owned business registration service, show that he owns 50% of MHOA Africa, which is a joint venture with another Demir group. Now, we'll talk about the reasons for his deportation, but that headline already tells you, deported Ruto ally wins affordable housing deal. How many red flags can you clock? Deported. Ally. Affordable housing. I don't know. There's so many things. We'll talk about the reasons for his deportation. Of course, what this means for our affordable housing. 100,000 units is si kidogo kabisa. It's quite a number of homes, and also the value in cash of these affordable homes. There's also a story on the back page of the Daily Nation that caught my eye. Students are in agony over delays in HELB cash disbursement. This is something that has been in the news cycle for the last 2 years, perhaps. It's either a delay in the disbursement of cash from HELB, or it's the fact that the new university funding model isn't working, or it's students wanainama because, again, they're unable to meet their needs plus the fees and just, be able to afford a decent meal at the end of the day. But thousands of students in public universities are facing financial distress due to delays in the disbursement of funds for their upkeep from HELB. First and second year students previously being supported through the university funding model that was declared unlawful by the High Court last year are now finding themselves in a very precarious position, because as transitions happen, do we go back to HELB? Who bridges the gap in whenever something is declared unlawful and there was people depending on it for funding? We're in the same situation almost with other things. Kitu inakansoliwa leo, and there's people in need of drugs, for example, people in need of healthcare, but we don't have any way to bridge the gap or something to cushion them as we find a long-term solution.
Yeah, and it says here, whereas some students received the money via mobile money transfers, others are still waiting a week after the announcement for the funds to be disbursed. And we can see that the lending manager is speaking to protesting students. But yeah, to your point, the inconsistencies that are completely affecting and disrupting the students' education. It's really unfair.
It is. I mean, you don't know. First of all, you've already been forced to maybe downgrade your course of choice because it was too expensive. You wanted to do medicine, that's 6 years. You look at the fees and the funding model and you're just like, no, I can't do this, let me do something else, right? Or you wanted to go to University A and you're like, my parents' pockets don't allow for this, and I've been placed in the wrong band, in the wrong category, in the wrong, place, and you decide, okay, let me go to whatever is closer to home. Maybe then I can save a little money on boarding and accommodation, etc. Okay, then the funding model is declared unlawful. You're still left in limbo. Your parents have done what they could to provide for you to make sure you get to university, but how do you then get, finish that university education? And of course, do it with dignity, because I think it's something that used to,
keyword,
right? It used to be a thing of, you get paid to go to school. Unapewa boom. 5,000 in 1990 ilikuwa pesa nyingi sana. Watu walikuwa wanajenga nyumba na hiyo pesa almost, right?
Yeah.
But now you have to crowdfund for university education. Almost reminds me of like the American model. The fact that 5-10 years ago you could go to uni with about 30,000 shillings a year, 32,000 for some courses. Now it's 150, 160, out of reach for most people. So very worrying.
It's one of those things again that, like Jacqueline Mugo was saying yesterday, the Federation of Kenya Employers boss, that we have good plans, but the implementation part of it is what usually becomes a problem for the government. All right. When I listen to HELB, when I listen to the universities fund, when I listen to public university lecturers and vice chancellors, when I listen to the Ministry of Education and all, I can see what the issues have been. The issues about this previous funding model, where it was just uniform. So whether you're taking a BA course, whether you're taking a medical course, it's all costed the same, and of course it doesn't cost the same. And then there's a part of all along the government sponsoring students into university through the differentiated unit cost. So each student then gets a capitation of X amount of money. And the differentiated unit cost was supposed to, government should foot the bill of this particular course that you're taking up to 80%. Government then does not do that. Government only is able to send 30%, 28% in some cases. So that other gap, you cannot go to the student to tell them, bridge the gap, because the student only knows that I'm only paying for 20%,
a certain
18%.
amount.
And that money is now coming through my HELB loan. So I take the HELB loan, it pays that.
Right.
The government has only paid this 30%. So the university has a gap of 40% of money that should be coming that has not come.
Right.
Because it is going to debt.
Right.
So let's work on a new funding model that says this is the cost for each of the courses. This is how we are going to do it. We are going to give you a scholarship. Then you are going to get a loan through HELB. And then based on the assessment of your capability, some of it is going to come out of pocket, out of household. So these are the three. Now the issue comes with, for you to get the first two, that's the HELB. The HELB is fixed actually, it's just about 30%. But for you to get this scholarship, then we have now to determine your capacity,
your
and
level of need, quote unquote. Yeah.
This is where the bans came in, and the problem of the rollout of this means testing is where the issue has been. You're left now with HELB, which has money, which is intending to disburse according to the new funding model, which is 30%, 30%, 30%. The rest is going to come from the government, and the other money, depending on who you are, is coming from pockets. Okay?
Right.
Students here are now HELB is wondering, so do I send the money to the students or do I not? Because there are so many appeals on the categorization and how you place me in the band. Do I send the money? And that's why HELB here, I can see the HELB lending manager, Kengori Ndego, was trying to speak to the students and saying, for the last 2 weeks, we've been trying to find the best way to make payments, and we have now decided to pay students under the old funding model. Because there's this whole issue, and there's no clarity, and yet these students are expecting us to disburse the money to them, so we're just going to do under the old funding model for now. Here, some students have started receiving money, others are yet to receive money.
Yeah, they're being told loan pending. You mentioned that, so one of the issues that came in was the scholarship means. Was it that the criteria was co-opted, or I want to understand that element. At what point did that become an issue with regards to how the loans were
I think
disbursed?
it's the means testing. So, and maybe Eric knows more about like what metrics they use to decide your means.
It's never clear.
Right.
And I thought that's where the gap is.
Yeah,
if it's not clear, that's very dangerous.
Everyone says, I filled whatever paperwork was required of me. You know, that means I'm assuming you give your parents, for example, income, etc. Their sources of income, if any, their capability, what they can pay. And then they tell you you're in band 3, so you get this much funding. You're in band 2, so you get this much funding. And for a lot of them, they're like, the band you've placed me, it does not.
Really, that's above my pay grade.
You know, yeah, it's exactly that.
Grade, right?
It's above my pay grade or my income level. Yeah.
I think the whole issue here, again, coming back to the rollout. Okay, so how do we determine the income levels of a student? We have history of this student for the last how many years? 8 plus 4, 12 years of school. We know this student. If we just went to the primary school, no, don't even go to primary, go to the high school and talk to the principals and ask them, how was the fee-paying habit of this particular child? There's a principal who will tell you, this child was paying fees in 3 installments. This child was paying fees. I mean, we had to go an entire term. They haven't paid. They were getting, sponsorship. The checks that were coming in were bursary checks. You can tell there's need here. Principals can tell you the children who are needy in their schools,
right,
and those who are not, and the level of need. Principals can also tell you, okay, so this one, the way they've been paying, they have been paying consistently from our end. Go to the community and ask. You have community, you have chiefs. People who are seeking bursary and school support in secondary school, the chief will know. Because they will go to a chief to get a letter at some point. The chief will tell you that, yes, this is a needy student. But we are not doing any of that. All we are doing is we are telling the students at application point, go to a local cyber cafe, fill out this form. Say, what do you do? What do your parents do? This and the other. And you have not, first of all, sensitized students when they were in Form 3 into Form 4 that we are going to have a new funding model when you go into university, and this is what is expected of you. So start knowing how you fill this form. So people are just going to fill the form and just saying, my parent does this, does the other, does the other. Form goes there and shows, okay.
Eric, how do we account for mom had a great job last year, and something, the economy happened, whatever happened, USAID pulled out, now we're at 0.
An income is lost.
Right.
Things happen. Death happens.
Right.
I still think the community or school would know. It's the same way, I've done some work in terms of also trying to identify, are there students we can support for this program? They're smart, but you can tell there's inconsistencies in how they pay their fees. And it's true. The way we do it is you go and speak to the community. You speak to the chief, you speak to the teacher, and it does give you a really good profile. They're like, oh, she's brilliant. She's brilliant, but she's very inconsistent. This one is brilliant, but honestly, they're struggling to pay. We're not as thorough.
Okay.
I think that the way, again, Jacqueline talked about how we've got good ideas.
Yeah.
What happens is some of the elements that are seen to be non-essential or seen to be something that's not as important, like being thorough when you're explaining to students the transition, when you're trying to reach out to the communities. What I keep sensing from every headline we read daily is an implosion, explosion, kind of something that could have been nipped in the bud, but it keeps coming up because it kept building.
You just ignored things.
You ignored things.
You have a project you're launching and then you have ignored very many steps. We keep giving these examples. Look at when the Central Bank of Kenya converted the 1,000 bob notes.
Right.
Okay? It was at a public event. I don't remember which one of those national days. The president finished his speech and he said, I'm now going to call the central bank governor to come and talk to the nation. Central bank governor came and said, we are going to launch a new 1,000 bob note within the next X number of days. And what we expect you to do is, well, the 1,000 bob note that you have, take it to the bank, they will give you a new one. Take it to the bank, they'll give you a new one. That was it. And then the communication started. Every day you're just hearing and seeing, have you changed your note? Have you changed your note? Have you changed? People knew that this is going on, and people knew that there's a deadline. And people knew if you have this old note after this date, then it becomes piece of paper. Some were willing to keep it. I kept one, you know, just for
keepsake.
Yeah.
But there was proper communication. And that's it. Everybody walk with me. We are launching SHA in October. This is what we'd like you to do. If you're already registered in NHIF and you're a contributor, do not worry. We shall automatically migrate you because you're already on the database. If you're not, this is it. And these are the benefits of SHA. This is what you shall get from SHA. This is what, all those. We have 3 funds under SHA. Did you hear any of that?
Nada. You see, people are saying exactly what is in the papers on TikTok, right? So it's sometimes it might seem theoretical when you're reading the back page of the Daily Nation.
Yeah.
But Murang'a Express says help has been released to some, others are waiting. Debbie Debalero, I hope I've said your name correctly, says bado tunangojea, and with the tears emoji. Clearly that's a student still waiting. Yeah. Still also says some students have no bank accounts. This week majority are flocking to banks to open branches. Meaning, again, maybe that was a requirement that was not clearly communicated, right? That you need a bank account. And Debala 6 goes on to reply to that. As you know, I'm one of those without a bank account. I didn't receive, I'm one of those with a bank account. I didn't receive anything until now. So it's clearly not just the issue of do you have an account, do you not have an account? And it's more and more comments like that on TikTok. Guys saying, I'm watching from Garissa University, bado sijapata hiyo pesa, right? That's what's happening right now. Those are real people's lives, and we're wondering, how do you explain to them? Because we can say there was lack of clarity, there was but at the end of the day, that's someone who either has to defer a semester, or who has to live on almost nothing, or who does not have the means to go back home should, you know, they be sent home from school. It's very, very messy.
When you don't understand their full scope and their lived experience, and you do this, you don't understand how much you're disrupting a specific person. Because to what we've spoken about, not everybody is at the same level. There's an assumption that these specific students who we're giving help loans are just one criteria. This is what they look like. This is what their lived experience is. But they're telling us, no, not necessarily.
It's 1:30. Look how time flies, right? And so let's take this break. We allow